But what was interesting about Frassati, besides his undying faith to his religion and to the church and to all of that, okay, the thing about Frassati was the way in which he embodied two principles, and that was to love your neighbor as yourself, and to put God above all else. And the thing that got me about Frassati was his love for the poor. And I think that that's very extraordinary. Because, again, I said that he grew up, you know, he was born into a family that was very, very privileged. I mean, again, an ambassador to the country and someone who owned one of the most powerful newspapers in the country. So imagine that in the modern day kind of context. An individual of that group or that class, of course, would be considered very powerful. But as time went on, as Frassati was growing up, he would be ridiculed by his parents as they noticed he would come home sometimes when it was very, very, very bitterly cold out and he wouldn't have his jacket on. Or they would hear of what we later found out through his notes were these numerous small to medium level loans that he took out from the St. Vincent de Paul Society and from other individuals in the neighborhood and in the communities, and the ways in which he would go into the places where there was just crap, literally defecation and urination and vomit, places this poor. This was at a time in the 20s, I believe there was some kind of war going on there or something, right? This was war-torn, and it was very poor. Very, very poor. And this was a guy that went into these places, and he ministered to the poor and to the suffering. And he was literally, it was very remarkable. He went to these places, and he gave to the poor, and he did all this stuff that was absolutely remarkable. And when he ended up dying at 24, his parents, again, this was I'm trying to consolidate this and make this coherent for you. But again, his parents had ridiculed him and such growing up. And they would hear of these wild things that he would do. And it was really powerful because when he died at 24, at his funeral, suddenly, again, these parents had no clue. All of a sudden, there were thousands of people. This isn't just some kind of lore or whatever. There were pictures and things that, you know, that prove this. And so, as I read this book, and I read about his charitable works and such, it's really kind of put into perspective, like, you know, what we have going on right now in our country, as we look at circumstances, and we look at fighting wars, and we have all this poverty, and not only material poverty, but again, it seems as if there's kind of a spiritual kind of famine, so to speak. I'm trying to like get some energy here, and I'm talking about like everywhere, not just here tonight. And it can be difficult sometimes, but it kind of put into perspective, especially in this paragraph right here. If there's anything, as I'm going in this kind of meandering direction here, talking about the life of this man in a very vague way, okay? This paragraph kind of summed it up, okay? And this was a letter he had wrote to someone. And right before it said, he loved the poor with Christ's eyes and tried all he could to make other young people share his passion. He was very in touch with the young as well. And in this letter, some paragraphs in, he said, as we grow close to the poor, bit by bit we gain their confidence and can advise them in the most terrible moments of this earthly pilgrimage. We can give them the comforting words of faith, and we often succeed not by our own merit in putting on the right road people who have strayed without meaning to. I think I can say that the Conference of St. Vincent, with its visits to the poor, serves to curb our passions. That's interesting. It gives us incentives to get on the right road by which we are all trying to reach the great gate. So I guess what I'm trying to leave you with tonight is to, while we sit here in a position of kind of a privilege ourselves, keeping in mind all the struggles that we go through, you know, personally, physically, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, is to remember and to keep into perspective, you know, not only like what's going on out there and realize it's blah, 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 but a lot of times we, you know, like we turn on TV and we see these you know, celebrities going through crap, and politicians are doing crazy stuff. And like I made a point a couple weeks ago, if you know, like Tiger Woods, for instance, it's all over the media, all over the media. And what's going on in Tiger Woods' life is Tiger Woods' business. It really is. It really is. We get caught up in all the politics and all the craziness about the circumstances, but I have two things about that situation. And this kind of ties into what I'm going through here, what I'm walking towards here. Is A, who are the ones that are looking after? We talk about looking after the poor. Who are the ones that are looking after and ministering to Tiger Woods, let's say? It's like, oh, well, he has everything. He has all the money in the world. Well, who's ministering to him? Who's ministering to George W. Bush? Lord, I hope he has a team of people around him. Who's ministering to Obama? And so I say that to break through a barrier of kind of conditionality, if I may make up my own word. Is that a word? Conditionality? That to let our love for the poor, try to let that be the same love that we have for the rich. Let's try to take our desires. You know, when the Ohio State Buckeyes run out onto the field, you know, like we go crazy. I challenge the people in here, when there's an opportunity to help someone who's struggling, to take that same passion towards helping them. I know that sounds kind of crazy. Like we're not going to stand up and go wild about helping someone, but if we can kind of tap into that certain spirit, then I think that would be an amazing thing. I think that if we can start to move towards a place where we can get excited about doing things for the less fortunate, then we'll kind of come to that place where that Frassati talks about. And I think that we'll start to maybe see some change in all this stuff that I complain and bitch about. Excuse me for using that word that begins with a B. All those things I complain about. And this the young lady in the right behind Faye, you right there. I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry. But she made the point one night when I was up here on one of my rants, well, you know, she asked the most important question. And she said, well, what do you do about it? What can we do about it? So I guess, what can we do about it? I challenge you to find those individuals that you see in your life that are struggling, and to break through that level of fear that if you help them and you give of yourself, self-sacrifice, that you will kind of lose some sort of status that you have. A lot of times we can be fearful of giving of ourselves because we're fearful of losing some sort of status that we have, be it monetary, whatever it might be. So please, especially as we come into Advent, into Christmas, and to other times of the year, keep the individuals in mind, because I was after reading this, I was somewhat appalled. I'm going to admit this. I was somewhat appalled then during the Thanksgiving time. And I don't say this in a self-righteous way, please, but this is just my observation. When we think about Thanksgiving, okay, and a time to give thanks, right?